August 1943. The early morning fog hung low over Bassingbourn Airfield, England, and the chill cut through the bomber jackets of every young airman who shuffled toward the massive B-17s lined up on the tarmac. Among them was 19-year-old Staff Sergeant Michael Romano, a replacement tail gunner for the 91st Bomb Group. Small enough to fit in the cramped rear of the Flying Fortress, he was barely more than a boy, fresh from the steel mills of Pittsburgh, yet here he was, tasked with one of the deadliest jobs in the war, defending a bomber formation from German fighters while kneeling on a bicycle seat barely large enough to hold him, wielding guns that felt heavier than life itself. The Army had trained him for 6 weeks. Clear jams, estimate range, pray shots connect. That was it. His assigned position, the tail, offered almost no visibility, a coffin-shaped enclosure with a simple ring and bead sight designed for men who were supposed to calculate deflection angles, bullet drop, and target velocity on the fly, all wearing bulky gloves in sub-zero temperatures and hoping the enemy pilot made a mistake first. Under ideal conditions, seasoned gunners on the ground barely hit 12% of their targets. In the air, under fire, in hypoxia, the hit rate dropped to near zero. Romano's first combat mission came on August 19, 1943. The target, a German industrial hub in the Netherlands. His heart pounded as 3 FW-190 swooped in, diving low and fast. He fired 480 rounds in what felt like an eternity. Later, gun camera footage revealed each tracer passed harmlessly behind the enemy aircraft. 2 bombers in his formation were shredded, and the reality hit him like a punch to the chest. He could not protect his comrades with the tools he had. By the time he landed, Romano's hands shook, not from fear, but from the sheer physical and mental exhaustion of manipulating 84-pound guns in a space that made it impossible to aim properly. That night, staring at the guns in the quiet of the revetment, an idea formed. The problem wasn't the gun. It wasn't even the mount. It was vision. Tail gunners fired blind, chasing targets they could barely track. He needed a way to see exactly where his bullets would go before pulling the trigger, a reflector sight, but one that could survive the impossibly tight quarters of a tail position. Romano's background offered nothing in engineering theory, yet years of practical problem-solving in the steel mills had trained him to improvise, to see solutions others dismissed. With a pencil and scrap paper, he sketched angles, mirror positions, ways to redirect light so he could watch the tracers from his own guns while aiming at the enemy. By dawn, he had a design that required no powered components, no factory modifications, no approvals. It was illegal, yes, but feasible. And in his mind, it might just save lives. Finding help was another challenge. Technical Sergeant Frank Kellerman, a veteran aircraft mechanic, had the skill to fabricate the system, but balked at breaking regulations. "This is illegal," he said, looking at Romano's hastily drawn schematics. "If anyone finds out, you could be court-martialed." Romano nodded, undeterred. "Sir, these guns aren't saving anyone as they are. If this works, maybe we save some of them." Kellerman paused, then agreed. Time was critical. Romano was flying the next day. Under the cover of night, they scavenged parts across the base. Curved mirrors from broken navigation equipment, plexiglass from shattered canopies, and aluminum brackets from retired airframes. The reflector sight itself came from a wrecked P-47, its nose-mounted sight re-engineered to fit the tail. 3 small convex mirrors were mounted to give peripheral vision, allowing Romano to track tracers and enemy aircraft simultaneously. The assembly was crude, held together with bolts, safety wire, and ingenuity, but it worked on paper. Dawn arrived. Romano climbed into the tail, heart hammering, nerves stretched taut. Officers had no idea this modification existed. He centered the reticle, checked his mirrors, and waited. The first enemy fighter appeared, a Bf-109 diving in from the 6 o'clock low. Romano's hands moved instinctively, tracking through the makeshift sight. A 3-second burst, a pause, a quick adjustment. Smoke erupted from the enemy aircraft. Romano's first kill, his first moment of vindication. The base erupted once word spread, but so did controversy. Unauthorized modifications, strict regulations, and the potential for disaster loomed over every conversation. Yet the numbers spoke for themselves. One tail gunner's ingenuity had changed the odds, turning near-certain death into a chance at survival. For the men of the 91st Bomb Group, hope, previously a distant abstraction, suddenly became tangible. And that hope, born from the determination of a single 19-year-old who refused to accept failure, would soon ripple through the skies over Germany. Romano's first kill sent a shockwave through the 91st Bomb Group. Word of his improvised mirror reflector sight traveled fast, whispered between mess halls and maintenance hangars, igniting both awe and anger. Veteran tail gunners crowded around him, eyes wide, wanting to know every detail. How did he manage to track tracers so accurately? How difficult was installation? Could the mirrors survive a high-speed dive or slipstream stress? The questions were endless. But while the enlisted men buzzed with excitement, the officers responded with alarm. Regulations existed for a reason. Unauthorized modifications to defensive armament were strictly prohibited under Technical Order Z120 EG2. Breaking them could mean court-martial, a dishonorable discharge, or worse. The morning briefing on October 7, 1943, was tense. Captain Richard Voss, the squadron armament officer, marched to the hard stand, clipboard in hand, his expression tight with barely contained fury. He demanded an explanation for the unauthorized equipment installed in the tailgunner's station. Romano stood at attention, calm but resolute. "Sir, I installed an improved sighting system." "You installed what?" Voss barked. "Do you have any comprehension of the regulations you violated? Technical Order 0120 EG2 explicitly prohibits modifications to defensive armament. This isn't a hot rod in your backyard. This is a combat aircraft. Unapproved modifications can compromise structural integrity, create fire hazards, interfere with other systems." Romano's reply was simple but unwavering. "Sir, the system works. I shot down one of the enemy aircraft. I don't care if I shot down the entire Luftwaffe. The old system didn't work. This does." The room stiffened. Officers exchanged glances, some outraged, others secretly impressed. Lieutenant James Holbrook, Romano's pilot, stepped forward. "Captain, my tail gunner got his first kill today using that sight. Maybe we should—" Voss cut him off. "The modification will be removed. That's final." But Romano's results couldn't be ignored. Tail gunners were dying. Losses in August and October 1943 were staggering. 60 bombers in the first Schweinfurt raid, 30 in the Bremen raid, 30 more at Münster. Factories couldn't replace them fast enough. General Henry Hap Arnold received casualty reports daily, questioning whether daylight bombing remained viable at such a cost. Every day a B-17 flew without effective tail defenses meant more American lives lost. By October 11th, the situation escalated. Major William Calhoun, operations officer, demanded a practical solution. If Romano's system improves accuracy even marginally, he argued, we need data. Test it. Gun cameras will record every engagement. If it works, authorize installation group-wide. If not, remove it. Simple. The debate with the engineers continued, safety concerns clashing with the urgent need to reduce losses. Colonel Stanley Ray, commanding officer of the 91st Bomb Group, finally intervened. He listened silently for 90 minutes as arguments volleyed back and forth. Then he spoke. "How many bombers did we lose last week?" Silence filled the room. 17. "And how many fighters did our tail gunners shoot down?" 3. He shook his head. 17 bombers lost, 3 enemy planes destroyed. We cannot afford to ignore effective solutions because regulations get in the way. Ray turned to Romano. "Your modification stays on your aircraft. You'll fly the next 3 missions with gun cameras recording every engagement. If your hit rate improves measurably, we'll authorize wider implementation. Understood?" Romano saluted. "Yes, sir." The first mission with the official nod of cautious approval came on October 12th. Romano climbed into the tail, his mind focused, body tense. Enemy fighters scrambled to intercept a formation of 236 B-17s over submarine construction facilities along the German coast. Romano centered the illuminated reticle in his field of vision, watching his peripheral mirrors for tracer alignment. A Fokke FW-190 dove from 7 o'clock high. Romano fired a precise burst. The enemy's wing erupted in flames. Another Bf-109 approached from 6 o'clock level, classic tail attack profile. He adjusted using mirror feedback. The canopy shattered. The fighter rolled inverted, spiraling away in defeat. When the formation returned to Bassingbourn, Romano had 2 confirmed kills and 1 probable, expending only 380 rounds, dramatically more efficient than conventional tail gunners, who averaged nearly 2,800 rounds per kill. The base erupted with excitement, but the debate over regulation continued. Engineering officers noted that Romano's system had not been factory approved, yet the numbers were undeniable. The effectiveness of the tail guns had skyrocketed. In the mess hall that evening, veteran gunners and mechanics gathered around Romano, dissecting every angle, every mirror position, every reflection technique. Some were inspired to imagine modifications for their own stations, others worried about repercussions if caught. Romano's innovation was dangerous in theory, revolutionary in practice. It challenged the military hierarchy, questioned established protocols, and, most importantly, offered a chance to save lives that would otherwise have been lost. By the end of that week, discussions evolved into action. Kellerman and the maintenance crew began fabricating additional mirror reflector sights from salvaged parts, carefully documenting measurements and angles to ensure repeatable results. Every system was painstakingly assembled, tested, and installed, creating an improvised production line under the noses of inspectors. The first wave of operational results confirmed what Romano had hoped. Tail gunner accuracy was increasing dramatically. Luftwaffe pilots, accustomed to near impunity when attacking from the rear, suddenly faced accurate, sustained defensive fire. Bomber losses dropped, morale rose, and the shadow of fear that had hung over the tail gunner station began to lift. One teenager's refusal to accept failure had begun to change the course of the air war, a ripple effect that would soon extend far beyond a single airfield in England. By mid-October 1943, the transformation at Bassingbourn Airfield was underway. Romano's mirror reflector sight, once a secret, illegal experiment, had become the topic of quiet fascination and careful imitation across the 91st Bomb Group. Officers still bristled at the unauthorized modifications, but the numbers were impossible to ignore. Tail gunners equipped with Romano's system were no longer praying their tracers would hit. They were consistently scoring, saving their crews, and forcing Luftwaffe fighters to think twice before attacking from the rear. The improvised production line in the maintenance hangar had become a well-oiled machine. Technical Sergeant Frank Kellerman led the effort, fabricating 4 complete mirror systems per day from scavenged components. Plexiglass from shattered canopies, convex mirrors from broken navigation equipment, and aluminum brackets from retired airframes. Every assembly was carefully measured, angled precisely, and tested in simulated gun runs. Romano supervised the installations personally, offering feedback and refining the system on the fly. What had begun as a single teenager's idea was becoming a group-wide innovation. October 20th arrived. Romano and his fellow tail gunners, now equipped with the mirror reflector sights, joined a massive raid over German-occupied territory. The Luftwaffe scrambled 250 fighters to intercept. Romano centered the illuminated reticle in his field of vision, glancing at his mirrors to see the tracers of his own guns. Every burst now provided instant feedback. The first enemy plane approached low, classic 6 o'clock tail attack. Romano adjusted slightly, fired, and saw his tracer converge with the FW-190's fuselage. Flames erupted, the fighter rolled, and Romano exhaled, his heart still pounding. All around him, other tail gunners were experiencing the same effect. Gun camera footage would later confirm an unprecedented increase in accuracy. Hits were no longer random luck, they were deliberate, precise, and lethal. By the end of the mission, tail gunners using Romano's system had accounted for 11 confirmed kills against 47 attacking fighters, a nearly 3-fold improvement over previous averages. For the first time, the numbers reflected what Romano had hoped. American airmen could fight back effectively. The Luftwaffe noticed immediately. German after-action reports described the B-17 tail positions as now significantly more dangerous. Pilots accustomed to attacking from the rear with impunity found themselves under precise, accurate fire, often before they could line up a proper shot. The days when a fighter could dive on a bomber formation and escape unscathed were over. Tail attack profiles that once guaranteed a near-certain kill were now deadly gambles. Back at Dasingborn, the debate among the officers shifted. Captain Morrison, once adamant that the illegal modifications be removed, now watched gun camera footage with growing respect. Major Calhoun pushed for wider implementation, arguing that the lives saved far outweighed the breach of protocol. Colonel Ray, ever pragmatic, weighed risk against necessity. The evidence was irrefutable. 17 bombers lost last week, only 3 fighters destroyed. Now, with Romano's system, losses were declining, and enemy aircraft were being neutralized with startling efficiency. Romano himself flew mission after mission, each engagement providing more data, more confirmation that the system worked. He became a quiet legend among the crews. No longer was he just a tail gunner. He was a symbol of ingenuity and courage under impossible conditions. Every time a bomber returned with fewer flak holes, every time a fellow airman survived an attack that would previously have been fatal, the impact of his work became more tangible. By the end of October, 18 B-17s in the 91st Bomb Group carried Romano's mirror reflector sights. Losses plummeted. Crews returned alive where before they would have been lost. Tail gunners, once the most vulnerable men in the sky, now had confidence in their firepower. Each mission reinforced a simple truth. One innovative mind, refusing to accept the status quo, could reshape the odds in war. Beyond the immediate effect on bomber formations, Romano's innovation sent ripples through command channels. High command began taking note of the improvised system's effectiveness. Field-expedient modifications were rare, often dismissed as risky, but here was a case where necessity, ingenuity, and courage converged. Officers had to reconcile the law with the survival of their men. Orders for standardization and broader deployment began circulating, and the 91st Bomb Group became a testing ground for what would eventually influence formal B-17 tailgun systems. Meanwhile, Romano remained humble. He didn't seek credit. He simply wanted to survive, protect his comrades, and prove that the old systems were failing. Each successful mission was its own reward. Each fighter downed a confirmation that ingenuity could overcome impossible odds. The young tail gunner had turned desperation into innovation, fear into action, and in doing so had begun to rewrite the rules of aerial warfare over Europe. And while the skies above Germany remained deadly, the men below Bassingbourn could now climb into their bombers with a renewed sense of purpose. Thanks to one teenager's refusal to accept failure, hope had returned to the tailgunner station. By early November 1943, Romano's mirror reflector sight system was no longer a secret experiment. It had become a lightning rod. The engineering officers, initially skeptical, now demanded formal testing. They worried about structural integrity, reliability under combat stress, and potential interference with other systems. Regulations were clear. Unauthorized modifications were strictly prohibited. Yet the battlefield had changed. Losses were decreasing, and German pilots were hesitating to attack rear positions. Romano's innovation had proven itself in the most brutal environment imaginable. At Bassingbourn, the engineers set up a rigorous series of tests. Each tail gunner was required to fire under controlled conditions while using gun cameras to record results. Every mirror angle, reticle placement, and tracer path was documented. Romano supervised, offering real-time adjustments, ensuring that what worked in combat could be replicated systematically. For the first time, field-expedient ingenuity was being scrutinized and validated with military precision. Meanwhile, missions continued relentlessly. On November 3, 1943, Romano flew the Wilhelmshaven raid. The Luftwaffe scrambled 250 interceptors against a formation of heavily laden B-17s. Romano centered the illuminated reticle in his field of vision, scanning the mirrored reflections of tracer paths while watching for incoming fighters. A dive from 6 o'clock low brought an FW-190 directly into his sights. Romano fired a short, calculated burst. The tracers converged perfectly. The fighter erupted in flames. Another Bf-109 attacked moments later. Romano's peripheral vision caught the first tracers misaligned, prompting an instant correction. The canopy shattered, the plane spun away, defeated. By the end of the mission, tail gunners equipped with Romano's system had accounted for 16 confirmed kills. Hit rate soared to 23.5%, nearly triple the previous average. The difference was no longer anecdotal. It was statistical, undeniable, and undeniable even to the most conservative officers. Morale among bomber crews surged. For the first time, tail gunners felt capable of defending themselves against the Luftwaffe's elite. Fear was still present, but it had transformed into calculated vigilance. Yet the formal approval process remained tense. Captain Morrison, still worried about precedent, argued that installing modified systems without 8th Air Force authorization could create chaos across other bases. If every enlisted man starts altering weapons, we lose control, he said, frustration evident. Major Calhoun countered, pointing to the loss statistics and increased kills. Control is meaningless if our men are dying unnecessarily. Data doesn't lie. Colonel Ray, ever pragmatic, mediated. He weighed the immediate survival of air crews against the risk of bureaucratic disorder. The evidence favored Romano's innovation. The systems were rugged, effective, and easily replicated. Ray's order was decisive. The mirror reflector sight system would remain on all aircraft under observation, and further modifications would be coordinated with Kellerman and the maintenance crew, ensuring both safety and rapid deployment. During this period, Romano flew multiple combat missions, each more intense than the last. Enemy pilots adapted, attempting new attack profiles, but Romano's sights gave him split-second advantages. He could track multiple fighters simultaneously, adjusting his fire in real time. Every engagement honed the system. Every battle provided more data. Tail gunners were no longer passive targets. They had become active, lethal defenders of their formations. At the base, mechanics and gunners worked tirelessly to standardize the installation process. The improvised production line churned out 4 mirror systems per day, and soon nearly every B-17 in the 91st Bomb Group was equipped. Each installation was meticulously recorded, every mirror angle measured, every reticle position verified. This fusion of battlefield improvisation and disciplined engineering created a bridge between raw ingenuity and military protocol. By mid-November, the impact was undeniable. Losses during raids dropped significantly. Crews who previously had little hope of returning alive now had a fighting chance. Gun camera footage, now reviewed rigorously by both combat and engineering officers, provided irrefutable proof Romano's system worked. It wasn't perfect, it was crude, jury-rigged, but it was effective beyond expectations. In the midst of the bureaucracy, the daily grind, and the constant danger, one truth became clear. Michael Romano, a 19-year-old tail gunner with no formal engineering training, had changed the game. His determination, creativity, and refusal to accept failure had transformed a desperate defensive position into a potent weapon. For the man of the 91st Bomb Group, the skies above Germany were slightly less deadly, and hope, once fragile and fleeting, now felt tangible. By late November 1943, Romano's mirror reflector sight system had moved from an improvised curiosity to a critical operational asset. The 91st Bomb Group now operated almost entirely with tail gunners equipped with the system. Installation lines ran continuously in the maintenance hangar, with Kellerman overseeing fabrication and training. Every tail gunner was briefed on proper alignment, mirror angles, and sight calibration. Even officers who had once opposed the modifications grudgingly admitted the results could not be ignored. The impact in the air was dramatic. During a mission on November 18th, Romano led a formation of 18 B-17s targeting German submarine pens along the North Sea. The Luftwaffe scrambled a mix of FW-190s and Bf-109s to intercept. Romano, now a seasoned veteran of dozens of combat missions with the mirror system, tracked multiple attackers simultaneously. The illuminated reticle in his primary sight kept his aim precise. while peripheral mirrors allowed him to watch tracers and adjust on the fly. In just one sortie, Romano personally accounted for 2 confirmed kills, with gun camera footage showing tracers converging accurately on enemy fighters. Other tail gunners in his group reported similar results. Hit rates averaged above 22%, nearly tripling what had been the norm only weeks earlier. Bomber losses during the raid dropped significantly, and crews returned with fewer flak holes and injuries. For the men of the 91st, the sky was no longer a death sentence, but a battlefield where skill, innovation, and courage could tip the odds. At Bassingbourn, the buzz around Romano's system reached higher command. Brigadier General Frederick Castle, commander of the 4th Bombardment Wing, arrived unannounced to inspect the installations personally. He examined the mirror systems, spoke with tail gunners, and reviewed gun camera footage from multiple missions. The results were undeniable. Accuracy had improved, losses were declining, and crew's confidence was visibly higher. Castle smiled, a rare expression among men who had witnessed the brutality of daylight bombing firsthand. "Sergeant Romano," Castle said, leaning on the tailgun turret, "how did you know this would work?" Romano shrugged. "I didn't, sir. The old sights didn't work. I figured anything else might be better." Castle laughed, a light, genuine sound that hadn't been heard in months in the airfield's briefing rooms. Then his expression turned serious. "You've probably saved more American lives than you'll ever know." Recognition, however, was slow to follow in official channels. The system had started as an unauthorized modification, and military bureaucracy required careful documentation before formal adoption. Yet the operational results could not be ignored. Orders were issued to preserve the mirror reflector sight as a field expedient system, with detailed instructions for installation, calibration, and training. Tail gunners across the 91st Bomb Group were now operating with equipment proven to increase survivability, a tangible edge against the Luftwaffe. The ripple effect extended beyond Bassingbourn. Word of the system spread to other bomber groups in England. Requests for installation guidance came in from multiple bases. Maintenance crews adapted the design to fit different B-17 variants, salvaging parts from damaged fighters where possible. What had begun as a single tail gunner's ingenuity was now influencing broader operational strategy. The morale boost was palpable. Tail gunners who had once approached their stations with dread now faced incoming fighters with a measure of confidence. Flight crews knew that attacks from the rear were no longer automatic death sentences. The mirror system gave them a fighting chance, sometimes more than just a chance. Survivors returned to briefings alive to fly again, and replacements trained under Romano's system absorbed knowledge that had previously cost hundreds of lives to acquire. The strategic implications were profound. German pilots found that rear attacks on B-17 formations had become much riskier. Luftwaffe after-action reports began acknowledging unexpectedly heavy losses from tail gunners. Strategies that had once guaranteed success against American bombers were no longer viable. Romano's system, initially a personal solution to an impossible problem, was reshaping tactical thinking at both ends of the European air war. For Michael Romano, the work never stopped. He continued flying missions, assisting with training, and refining the mirror reflector system. He remained modest, focused not on accolades but on results. Each success was a silent testament. Innovation, courage, and refusal to failure could save lives, even in the deadliest skies in the world. And as December 1943 approached, the 91st Bomb Group flew with renewed purpose. The combination of skill, innovation, and teamwork had transformed the tail gunner station from a symbol of vulnerability into a beacon of hope. Lives were being saved, missions were succeeding, and one young gunner from Pittsburgh had changed the way America fought in the air forever. By December 1943, Romano's mirror reflector sight system had moved from a desperate improvisation to a lasting innovation in the skies over Europe. The system, now formally documented, installed, and replicated across the 91st Bomb Group, had proven itself time and again. Tail gunners were hitting targets more accurately, bomber losses were decreasing, and Luftwaffe pilots were learning that rear attacks were no longer automatic victories. Michael Romano, the 19-year-old from Pittsburgh with no formal engineering training, had changed the rules of aerial combat. The broader impact was evident as the field expedient system influenced official modifications. Engineers at Boeing's Cheyenne Modification Center, already working on powered tail turrets, studied Romano's reflector sight principles. When the production Cheyenne turret began appearing on B-17Gs in early 1944, it incorporated the essence of Romano's innovation: improved visibility, reticle alignment, and consideration for the human element of tracking moving targets. Romano's mirrors, originally salvaged from wrecked aircraft, had inspired permanent design changes, marrying improvisation with engineering rigor. At Bassingbourn, Romano continued flying missions, now with the confidence of both a seasoned combatant and a recognized innovator. His peers revered him, mechanics and gunners alike relying on his expertise for guidance. Each sortie provided additional data, reinforcing the reliability of the system. Losses in the 91st Bomb Group dropped approximately 35% between October 1943 and March 1944, a tangible testament to the effectiveness of the modification. Every saved life, every bomber that returned intact, was evidence that one individual's determination could ripple through an entire force. Recognition extended beyond immediate commanders. Brigadier General Frederick Castle personally endorsed further deployment, ensuring that tail gunners in other groups received similar equipment. Military historians later credited Romano's improvised system with not only saving lives, but reshaping tactical thinking in bomber operations. Tail gunners were no longer seen as expendable. They had become integral, capable, and lethal components of the formation. Yet for Romano, the accolades were secondary. He remained humble, focused on the task at hand. He meticulously documented angles, mirror positions, and installation methods to ensure repeatability. He trained replacements, ensuring that every tail gunner could operate effectively regardless of prior experience. His innovation had begun with a simple observation, watching the reflection of his guns through the curved plexiglass, and evolved into a life-saving system that would influence aerial combat for years to come. The lessons of Romano's story extended beyond technology. They illustrated the power of practical problem-solving, courage, and the refusal to accept failure. In the crucible of combat, with lives at stake, bureaucracy and regulations were sometimes obstacles to survival. Romano's system exemplified how creativity and determination could overcome even the most rigid structures, delivering tangible results where conventional methods had failed. By early 1944, the mirror reflector sight was no longer unique to Romano's aircraft. Over 200 B-17s across multiple bomb groups carried the system, officially designated the Field Expedient Tailgun Aiming System, Type 1. Every mission flown with this modification further confirmed its value. Gun cameras documented improved accuracy, reducing wasteful ammunition expenditure and increasing the lethality of defensive fire. For every pilot and aircrew member who returned alive, Romano's innovation was a quiet hero. Romano's legacy endured well beyond the immediate combat missions. His insight influenced training protocols for new tail gunners, informed the design of future aircraft, and became a case study in military problem-solving. The principles of observation, feedback, and adaptation that he pioneered remained foundational in aerial gunnery long after the war ended. In the end, Michael Romano's story was not merely about technology. It was about the human element in warfare. A teenager, small in stature but enormous in courage, challenged assumptions, ignored the limits of regulations, and refused to accept failure. He saved lives, improved operational efficiency, and changed the course of bomber operations over Europe. Every B-17 that returned to base intact, every tail gunner who survived an attack that would have been fatal, carried the imprint of his ingenuity. Romano's journey reminds us that even in the deadliest skies, even amidst the strictest hierarchies, individual initiative and intelligence can make the difference between life and death. And as future generations of airmen learned from his example, the quiet reflection of a gunner in the tail of a flying fortress became more than survival, it became a legacy of hope, innovation, and courage.